Granda, what did you grow on the farm long ago?
Well, one of the things was corn, properly called oats.
How did you do that?
First the field was ploughed. A man ploughed the field using 2 horses and a plough. Then gave the field a light harrowing with the horses and a pin harrow. He then sowed the oats by hand. He had a bag apron on him filled with oats. He walked up and down the field scattering the oats. A child would carry a refill of oats to him in a bucket. The sowing became quicker and easier if the farmer managed to get a corn fiddle. When the field was all covered with oats, the ground was harrowed with a light harrow, and then it was rolled by a horse pulling a roller. This made sure all the seed was in the ground, and the roller would push down the stones also, so the ground would be smooth. There was a saying, the corncrake came when the corn was spread on the ground, and went away when he got the first grain of corn which grew.
What happened then?
The corn would grow about 3 foot high. When the corn was a golden colour, it was cut using 2 horses and a reaper. 2 men sat on the reaper. One drove the horses, the other man was the sheaf maker. The sheaf was then tied by a person who was walking after the reaper. This was a wisp of corn tied round the middle of the sheaf. It would take 3 or 4 people to keep after a horse and tie all the sheaves. The sheaves would then be stooked. In about a week it was then taken into the haggard and placed in reeks, usually 2 reeks spread apart to allow the mill go between them. A man who owned a thrashing mill and a tractor to power the mill would thrash the corn for payment. The mill was powered by the tractor. The sheaves of corn were fed into the mill. At one end of the mill, the corn oats came out into bags which were tripped onto the mill. At the other end, the straw came out. This is the stalks of corn from which the corn or oats has been removed. Well, the bags of corn were heavy and were carried into a shed. The straw was built into a rick in the haggard. The straw would be used for feeding and bedding animals during the winter. The farmer then could get some of his oats crushed into fine powder for bread, flour. Brooks's mill in Forkhill did this. Other oats would be used for feeding hens and horses. The farmer then knew that him, his family and his animals should be okay for the coming year. When the cutting of the corn was finished, a light-hearted custom was to plant a few stems of corn with the seed on and hung it on the back of the farm door. This was called the calla.
Granny, tell me about when you went to school.
Well, when I started Drummondtee School in 1951, there were 4 classrooms, but only 3 were used as there was 3 teachers. Several classes would be in the same room. No one else worked in the school, no classroom help, music, art teachers or secretaries. The school was a long rectangular building with a big room in the middle and a small room at each end. The big room was divided by a partition to make 2 rooms. All the rooms had a big open coal fire for heat. I think the teachers lit these fires themselves in the morning. There was 2 entrances to the school, each the same. Each entrance was through a hall with a coal house at one end, a few pegs on the wall for us to hang our coats, and then the door into the big room. We walked through the big room to enter the small end rooms. There was no running water. Toilets were dry toilets and they were outside. Girls and boys were mixed in the classroom, but at lunchtime there was 2 outside play yards. The girls were in one and the boys were in the other.
Did you have a school bag?
Oh yes, we had a school bag, and most children's school bags were worn on their back with a strap over and under each arm and it buckled across the front. So that meant we could run along and use our hands without holding on to our bags.
What did you carry in your bag?
Well, as I remembered, we had one jotter, one pencil. Now when we were in the small classes, the first classes, we got a pencil with a big thick lead in it. Then up a few classes we got an ordinary pencil, but you'd only have one pencil. A thin reading book, a table book and a catechism. Now the same table book and catechism did us all through school. The same one, just each class learned different pages. When I was about halfway through school, the catechism was replaced with a new thinner one with a few coloured pictures in it.
Did you ever get school dinners?
No, there was no such thing as school dinners, but we did get a little bottle of milk to drink in school, in the school plate. It was a third of a pint. This was supplied by the authorities and the milkmen left crates of milk into the school each morning. Now as I remembered, we all liked our milk and drank it.
How did you sharpen your pencil?
Well, we weren't supposed to need to sharpen. The teacher didn't particularly encourage us. We were supposed to have that all done before we came to school. But if you need to sharpen your pencil, the teacher had a one-sided razor blade. So you'd put your hand up and you'd ask permission to sharpen your pencil. You'd get the blade from the teacher and stand over a bin beside the book cupboard and sharpen the pencil yourself, and then give the blade back to the teacher. Now, when I was about 9, the 4th classroom was opened up and another teacher came to the school. Now, I suppose it just was more children in the area. Now, and about that time, there was flush toilets and hand washing facilities built in each play yard, but they were still out in the yard. So that was it. School was different at that time, but in lots of ways it was much the same as now. As a child, we went to school 5 days a week. We had no choice. We were supposed to try and pay attention and learn something. We had a lunchtime where we played about, and as children we most times agreed with each other and played with each other nicely. Sometimes we didn't, but overall we had a good time.